and the newsmakers and news breakers of today. Talk to the people who are involved in current events and headline issues. Talk radio is your invitation to a learning experience. Talk radio is
Bill Jenkins.
It's our new time. Yours and mine, 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. Welcome to Open Mind. And for the next 3 hours, we are here to stretch yours just a little bit. We've had such a marvelous time the last couple of weeks talking about your physical and spiritual self. We've gotten into mediumship with Thomas Jacobson and Frida Fell. But tonight, let's get back into science. Let's get back into the real world, yours and mine. We have talked so much about the ELF waves, the scalar wave technology. The new vistas of science are in front of us. They are marvelous. These new avenues of science that are in front of us, awesome at the same time if they are misused. Nothing more awesome, I guess, than the new technology. And I am so delighted to have with me tonight a man who can speak freely and with a great deal of authority about these, Dr. Bob Beck. Robert, welcome to Open Mind. We haven't talked to you in a long time. We've never had you in the studio before, but we have talked about the Russian weather control and some of the other things on the phone. You and Bill Bice, who've been doing so much valuable work in this field.
Well, a lot of our good friends have been with you, and I've been listening, and I've been sort of low profile, of course.
I've been trying to reach you for 2 years, okay. Robert. Where have you been?
Here we are.
and you're here tonight, and I am so delighted that you are. And we have so much to talk about in the next 3 hours. Let me ask you a few questions. Are the Russians manipulating our weather?
I don't know. I rather suspect that they have the technology for doing this. I've seen a couple of translations of their, efforts in that direction. It's feasible that if they somehow change the energy patterns of the jet streams, they can most certainly affect the weather patterns locally. And there are rumors that if they have done this, it's backfired. All we have to do is look at their own wheat production.
They don't do anything well.
They don't do anything well.
What about the cold explosions off Japan and Korea?
I followed that with a great deal of interest. I just really don't know. I heard a remarkable report about one of these direct from the pilot just a few days ago. Apparently almost an ice cloud had developed.
I don't want to put any... Maybe we ought to explain what a cold explosion is. I know that's sort of a misnomer. Do you want to go ahead and explain it?
Well, no. Let's sort of stick to the ELF and some of the things that I do feel I'm up to speed on.
Well, a cold explosion, because we opened up that can of worms. Go ahead and explain it. Yeah, what is that, a cold explosion?
You go ahead.
You're much more qualified than I.
Well, there have been a number of signatures that appeared to be atomic explosions, and the planes flying through the area picked up no radioactive debris, almost a virtual explosion, such as Tom Bearden has talked about, instead of an actual one. I really don't know too much about that. There's a great deal of speculation, and I don't have any official, let's say, fallout on those.
Well, what we're seeing here, as I understand it, now I'm not a scientist, and I'm just a journalist, just a guy here that is very interested in all these things going on, that we see this anomaly, if you want to call it that, where all at once there is a sudden draining of energy from a certain area, which causes heat to go away.
Oh, okay.
All right, heat goes away. And now it's very, very cold, and this sucks up a lot of moisture out of the ocean. Generally, these explosions are over the ocean. And we see a funnel of clouds going up 60 or 70,000 feet in the air. And they're very, very cold. Now, we've never seen that before. Usually when something causes that to go up in the air like that, we're talking about heat that does that. But these are cold explosions, as they were. They have all the signatures of an explosion, except the shock waves, and there's no radiation. There's just a massive movement of air and a drain of energy. Now, Tom Bearden will tell us that is caused by the movement of the scalar wave transmitters in the Soviet Union. Whenever they come...
Standing waves.
The standing waves, when they come and they cross with each other, they can either drain energy from that area or they can pump energy into that area, depending on what they want to do. Now, we know when we make something very cold, we have a low-pressure zone that's going to develop around that very quickly. If a couple hundred miles away, you reverse that process and create energy, you got a high-pressure area.
And you can certainly move things around with those two.
If you have a low-pressure area and a high-pressure area, and you can move them around at your discretion, aren't we in touch with a lot of fun?
Well, it looks like these are interesting times.
Tell us about the ELF waves. I know that you and I have talked about those before, and how those are affecting weather, the mind, and everything else.
I hate to admit this, but it was a series of serendipities, rather lucky accidents. I became fascinated with consciousness enhancement with EEG biofeedback in the late 1960s, and I'd followed Dr. Joe Camilla's work, the work at the Menninger Clinic of the Greens. And at that time, I didn't want to wait for a year or two on the waiting list, for example, at Barbara Brown's facility at VA Sepulveda, so I developed my own EEG biofeedback equipment. Yeah, and I was the most popular kid on the block. Around 1969 or 70, people were inviting me to dinner and said, well, bring your biofeedback apparatus. So one thing led to another. We began manufacturing these. And during the course of traveling, teaching health professionals to alter their brain waves and assist their subjects, I had one foot on each banana peel. My basic, let's say, training was in the physical sciences, but I also had this intense interest in consciousness and, well, let's say the enhancement of human abilities. So when I was in an area, I would have the opportunity of measuring the brain waves of the shamans, the witch doctors, the healers, the hexenmeisters. We found a very unusual thing, that most of their brain waves would seem to center at about 7.8 hertz when they were in their operating state. These were the real ones, the dowsers, the people who had a track record of absolutely delivering what they thought they were doing. And I later found that that was the principal node of the Schumann resonances. These were the electromagnetic pulsations that exist in the Earth ionosphere cavity. The Earth itself has sort of a magnetic signature. It's called the Earth's brainwave. And this brought up the question that if some of these people with remarkable talents were showing the same signature, which was right on the alpha-theta border, could it be that somehow they were tuning in to this ELF, or extreme low-frequency magnetic pulsation? Maybe this was the master drummer. Perhaps these people were marching to the sound of the same drummer, and we could find it in nature. In about 1962, an absolutely fascinating study was done at the University of Rhode Island with Drs. Polk and Fitchen, who were incidentally funded by the government, the Defense Nuclear Agency, actually, to see if they could measure this predicted pulse. When they built the apparatus, began seeing the signature, the most amazing thing developed. They could not tell the trace from a human brainwave. And this was published in the 1960s in the National Bureau of Standards Division of Radio Propagation Journal. So this raised the interesting question. We wonder if these people who had remarkable talents were somehow tuning to this same signal in the atmosphere. Maybe this was the drummer. So I proceeded to develop, because I couldn't afford to buy one at that time, extremely sensitive ELF magnetometers. So we went back, made brainwave studies. On one track of the recording, we would have the brainwave of the magic person, whatever his discipline might be. On the other, the actual ELF signature. And strangely enough, a number of these people were locked in synchronization with this little signal that was down in the millionths of a Gauss. Gauss is a measurement of magnetic intensity. I reported this in 1973, and of course at this time it was sheer heresy. Fortunately, there have been a number of international conferences, bioelectronic medicine, and various scientists have replicated this work.
Well, you've got to feel at home here because this show is known as sheer heresy also, but that's all right. We've been proven right time and time again. Go ahead.
Then we'll talk heresy.
Yeah, we'll talk heresy.
About 1976, a very, very powerful transmitter came on the air, and this turned out to be the Soviet woodpecker.
Is that the one at Riga?
That was Riga and Gomel. This was postulated to be the original site. There are others.
There are many others now.
Many others. And these things were putting out such a tremendous H vector, or magnetic pulse, that we could no longer measure the Schumann resonances. In other words, these were much stronger than the natural ambient in which man had evolved for many centuries, many thousands of years perhaps. So we began wondering what effect this would have on mass consciousness.
Well, let's stop there just a second, Bob. We're talking about we're always responding to this ELF because the Earth produces it.
Right.
Now, all at once, man produces a signal in that very same frequency that is thousands of times stronger. Is that what we're saying?
Well, at least hundreds.
Or at least hundreds of times.
Now, what is this beginning to do to evolution, global consciousness, etc.? And my good friend, Dr. Puharich.
Yeah?
Right. Who has...
Sat right there in that chair where you are.
Right. He has made perhaps more contributions of value to the areas of psychotronics and consciousness and New Age physics than anyone we know. Took an interest in this, so we went back to his Faraday cage in Ossining, New York, set up an experiment which absolutely, totally proved that these small magnetic pulses, which at that time I was generating with a little box that would go in your shirt pocket, would penetrate this many-layered Faraday cage. The Faraday cage is a shielded room that has multiple layers of copper, soft iron, copper, soft iron.
Lots of copper.
Lots of copper. And the objective is to shield out any type of electromagnetic disturbance. At this time, Dr. Puharich was working on some extremely sensitive hearing aid assistance devices. And much to both of our amazements, we found that his brainwaves and the brainwaves of the subject would absolutely track in frequency and amplitude this small signal that was being generated outside of the sealed Faraday cage. We have those chart recordings, and we'll probably be showing them next week at a little seminar that Paul's put together here. So it behooved us to report this to the United Nations.
Wait a minute. Give me the information on the seminar, because I want to go.
Okay. I was sort of talked into this. I'm rather low profile, but my good friend Paul Andrews said that we should do something called Occult Influences in Modern Health, an Electromagnetics Survival Seminar. Now, in case anyone is nattering at the word occult, we're using it in the strictest dictionary scientific meaning, which simply means hidden.
Hidden or secret.
Right. Now, many years ago...
It's not weird and evil and any of those things. We have a somatical problem.
Right.
People who listen to the show know that for the most part, but we're on a new hour tonight.
So let's change this word to hidden influences in health and disease, an electromagnetic survival seminar. And what we're talking about basically are some of the new problems that have emerged just in the last 10 years. When my grandparents were on the frontier, we were worried about smallpox and cholera and typhoid fever and maybe Indians. And we don't have this problem anymore.
There's something worse.
We have things that are worse. And these are in the electromagnetic spectrum, and these are definitely influencing our moods, our health, our mental acuity, our anxiety and depression coefficients. So we've developed over the years a number of fairly simple, fairly straightforward, and very inexpensive instruments that any 14-year-old kid can build from Radio Shack parts that will detect these things and in some cases provide countermeasures.
You can produce your own ELF in your environment.
You can. They've been doing this in Europe for a number of years, little devices that are worn in the shirt pocket, etc. No relation to others. We'll talk about the real McCoy at the seminar. So what we thought we would do, and because more and more people are genuinely concerned, is to put together a day in which we'll have a lot of dialogue, give out a whole lot of information, show a lot of slides, give people reprints of some of the articles that we feel are basically the survival tools of the future. And it will be held at the Los Angeles Airport Marriott Hotel. That will be Saturday, October the 13th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And there's a telephone number where you might call to get more information. And that's area code 213-393-9405. Now, we hope too many people don't show up because we're going to measure brainwaves of some of them and demonstrate to volunteers only that we can alter those brainwaves from a distance with little blue boxes, little black boxes. We're going to demonstrate how you can find some of these hidden influences to which we're all amenable. And we should have a darn good time by opening up this dialogue on some of the New Age occult influences. But this...
No, hidden.
Hidden, all right.
Hidden.
Better word. But getting back to the track, we took the brainwave chart recordings that we'd made in Dr. Puharich's Faraday cage in Ossining. This is before he was firebombed. That facility, of course, was burned down, and the cage was destroyed. And Puharich felt it was some government agents that thought he was making too much noise in these no-no areas.
Well, he was making a lot of noise.
He was and is, bless his heart.
We wouldn't think that our government would do anything like that.
No.
Or lie to us.
No.
Or any of those things.
So
we take away our freedoms, or... Go ahead.
Anyway, we established to almost everyone's satisfaction that these things did exist, that they were an actuality. And strangely enough, at that time, there were only about 3 of these ELF magnetometers in the world, and 2 of them were in the back seat of my old Chevy. The other one, of course, was back at the University of Rhode Island. So we began doing some surveys of where these Soviet woodpecker standing waves, at least the magnetic vectors, were popping up. To digress a moment, I was Radiological Defense Chief of District 17 here in Los Angeles back in the late 60s, and I sort of knew the ropes on tracking down the bad stuff. In those days, mostly what we had to worry about were the X-ray machines and the shoe stores, and the kids were getting a tremendous dosage. These were the types of things that in those days were radiological hazards. But now we had a new player on the scene. A lot of people were sensitive to these influences, hidden influences. So I was called by the University of Oregon Health Physics Department during the flap when the Soviet woodpecker materialized as a sort of a health hazard in Eugene, Corvallis.
What I want you to do now, Bob, let us stop right there, because we're talking about something that I get as much mail about as anything else, and that's the Soviet woodpecker in Washington and Oregon, and what it's done to the people up there, what it's still doing to the people up there. And let's explain that in detail. But before we do, let me, in detail, do some things that I have to do here. I'm Bill Jenkins. With me is Dr. Robert Beck. We're talking about the fringes of science, in a way, that just may... Well, you probably don't even know they exist. You haven't been with me before. This is the 9 o'clock hour. We've got a whole new group aboard. You may be frightened, but there's a lot of beauty to it, too. We'll be back in just a moment. Beck tonight, Robert Beck, who I suppose as much as anyone I know knows about the ELF signals that is primarily are being generated in the Soviet Union. Who knows what their original intent was? Perhaps it was weather control. But we do know that their fallout has affected the northwestern part of the United States, if not the southern part of California. In fact, we can certainly detect them here, but they were certainly much up there. I'm looking at some headlines here from the Eugene Register Guard. Mystery signals discovered in the Eugene area. This is November. I'm not wearing my glasses. Here we are, 1978. Mystery signals may cause illness. Mysterious radio signals causing concern in Oregon. That's from the Oregon Journal. We didn't hear too much about that down here in Southern California.
There was such a news blackout on this. There was a little bitty article in the Los Angeles Times, a fairly large article in the Santa Monica paper, and it made headlines in most of the major cities for about 3 or 4 days. And then it became extremely controversial. Lots of hypochondriacs came out, as well as people who had legitimate complaints. And the city fathers, perhaps wisely, decided that it was time for a news blackout, or let's confuse this with as much
flack as possible.
Exactly.
Which, of course, causes editors at radio stations, television stations, and newspapers to look elsewhere if there's a lot of flack there where they can't get down to the facts at all. But the fact of the matter is that something serious was happening up there.
Yes, it was.
Still going on?
Yes, it is, but perhaps not to the same extent. I can recall packing several suitcases with this rather exotic equipment, and the people at the health physics department of the university said, well, you'll be protected up here. And the protection consisted of some journalists that had guns under their raincoats at the stopping point. We were really playing cops and robbers.
It doesn't help much, does it?
Not very much, but...
I'm a journalist, and if I had a gun under my coat, your life is in danger, because I think it's going to go off, because I don't know how to use it.
We were very, very apprehensive about going up there. When we set up the magnetometers on the first day, we got absolutely nothing, and I began to believe that maybe these people were seeing things or hearing things. On the second day, we found a humongous signal, around 200 microgauss, that was booming in at several of the locations in Eugene, Oregon. We had Kay Prince with us then, who was the radiological health officer for the state. We had Mike Talley, who was the journalist who'd originally taken it upon himself to break this story in the Register Guard. And we had Marshall Van Oort, who was the health physicist from the university. And we absolutely, totally established that there was this new magnetic pulse signal. We made these recordings. I still have the telemetry tapes that we took at the place. The government's response was to send the EPA. Dr. Rick Tell arrived with a very large truck. I have no idea how much equipment he had in that truck. I've gotten to know Rick fairly well since this time.
Did he know what to do with it?
He did not know what to do with it. The receivers that they had went down to 10 kilohertz, which was all they had. Their spectrum analyzers did not go down to this low frequency. Now, of course, 1984, they have far better equipment, and I showed Rick how to build the magnetometers, which he now uses.
Is he still playing around Las Vegas?
He's in Las Vegas. I popped in on him every couple of years, and he reported that all of this was coming from a transmitter at Dixon at 4.717 megahertz. There was an encoded Navy transmitter down there putting out a very weird signal. It went and the...
Is that the old radio Jim Creek he was talking about?
Sort of. The information was in that little burst of white noise, and they weren't too familiar with it in 1978, so...
Was this the transmitter they used to use to talk to the submarines?
No. This was another story.
Okay.
But at any rate, we were there. We got the signal. The EPA didn't get the signal, and I haven't let Rick live this down. He attended several of my briefings in Washington when the government did take an interest in these things. I did some interagency briefings. I showed them the slides, showed them the tapes, let them listen to the signals, showed them the chart recordings.
Didn't make a dent, did it?
Not a dent. And I've had a lot of theories about this. Number one, they knew about it and didn't want to let on because I didn't have the types of clearances that would make me privy to this. I felt like a...
No Q rating for you?
No, not for me. Or else they didn't want to admit it was not invented here.
That's a big problem that we've had here in the United States. If it doesn't come from the USA, it doesn't happen.
Right. Mm-hmm. At that time, the consensus was, and perhaps still is, that the Soviet woodpecker was a form of over-the-horizon radar, and it was being used to watch the ionization paths of the missile launchings in the Dakotas, etc. And since that time, I think we've fairly well established that there's intelligence on the signals, that they can be used for underwater communication at tremendous depths, operational depths for their nuclear submarines. We definitely have established that in some cases this can be psychoactive, can alter brain waves, and there's more and more and more agreement on this now.
Finally.
Finally.
We've been talking about this for years, Robert.
Right.
We're finally seeing it, right?
I've attended several of the biomedical-type conferences, and we're just delighted now to see more and more papers coming out that these signals down in the microgauss intensity range that are so invisible that there are no instruments around that will actually measure them, and that's another long story. These things are psychoactive, and this would imply that man is a biocosmic resonator. He's tremendously sensitive to all of these very, very small variations if they're within these window frequencies of the human brainwave spectra.
Well, I think we should maybe kind of put it in another word. The whole human body responds to its basic environment, which is the planet Earth. And one of those responses that it has is in that range between 7 and 12 hertz. That's what the Earth responds to. And that's what we have over many thousands and millions of years have learned to respond to.
We've evolved with this. We're part of it.
We're
it's
part
of us.
Now, if we're taking a frequency which our mind responds to out of nature, amplifying it, and then putting a little subcarrier on that frequency, which is what the woodpeckers are, taking a basic frequency and putting another little bump into it. Because our mind is so attuned to that frequency, we now can start controlling what the mind is doing by how we are subcarrying that basic frequency. Am I
basically
being
right on?
Just for a kid from Texas that doesn't know anything what he's talking about, I'm just listening to you and to Tom Beard, and I'm just repeating words here. No, I understand what we're talking about. But a lot of people don't understand the enormity of what that is. Let me take it a little bit further. Let's say that I was an aggressor, and I had the ability now to put this earth wave into the mind of all of the people that I wanted to conquer. And I had the ability then to subcarrier that and change their emotional complex, the entire physiology of their body, because I'm dealing with their brain now. I could make them, if I wanted to, if I knew exactly how to make that little woodpecker signal work, as we call it, or that little extra frequency, very docile.
Yes.
Very lethargic.
It's being done. The last conference here at the Pettis Veterans Memorial Hospital in Loma Linda was June 1983. And several people reported on their experiments, mostly done offshore. Our Food and Drug Administration is very sticky about using human experimentation, but there are a number of people around the world, Jose Delgado in Madrid, for example, who's totally controlling emotions at tremendous distances with little bitty boxes.
Some with just their minds.
Some with just their minds. But if you pay your light bill, it takes a little less effort.
Yes.
It's beginning to emerge that we are having this type of a problem in our present anthropomorphic society. Dr. Adie had a fantastic little box out there called a LIDA. And I think this had made headlines in a few papers just before the conference. And this had been used by the Soviets for brainwashing. In fact, it was used in Korea. That was 1950, 1951.
Were we behind in this?
We're about 30 years behind in this, but we very well better catch up.
Imagine that.
I believe that the weaponry, most wars are fought over real estate. And if we
Our energy.
Right, exactly. And if we use fusion or fission, there isn't going to be much left of the real estate. So the next frontier is the anti-personnel type weapons, the neutron bomb, the ELF mind control. If you can get the people out of the way, the real estate's intact. So a great deal of effort has been put in investigating these. There are a few civilian fallouts in this that we
problems with the neutron bomb. It affects plant life.
Oh, then we
for
can't
many
use
many
that.
generations, and so
Right.
there goes the food chain. And so your real estate isn't any good if you have no food chain around it.
So let's just scramble the brains, and we've met most of our objectives.
Basically, that's what we're talking about in a way. The MX missile, the Tritons, those things will never be fired in the event of a full conflict.
That's group suicide.
There are other things to do that make those pop guns.
I believe this is correct.
I'm glad you agree with me. We're speaking to Dr. Bob Beck tonight. I'm Bill Jenkins. It's Open Mind. We'll be back in just a moment, and we'll open up the lines in just a moment. I want you to talk to this amazing man. Very, very... It's taken a long time to get you here, Bob, but now that we've got you for 3 hours.
I'm shy.
We're going to put you on the hot seat.
Uh-oh.
I'm Bill Jenkins. It's Open Mind. It's hour one of Open Mind, our new time, 9 to midnight tonight. With me tonight is Dr. Bob Beck. We're talking about the ELF signal. Let me give you some numbers so that you can get with us and talk to Bob about the ELF, about, well, most anything. Scalar wave technology. Are you ready to talk about that with this group tonight?
Well, not in too much depth. I wish I understood it that well.
It's a brand new thing that's happening, isn't it? Free energy.
Okay.
Is free energy for real?
Yes and no.
Yes and no. All right. Good for you there. Talk about that. A lot of those things that may be on your mind, and I know it's on the mind of those out there. All of our numbers end in talk. In Los Angeles, 520 is the prefix and ends in talk. San Fernando Valley, 990. If you're in Pasadena, Glendale, Burbank, your number is 244. In the San Gabriel Valley, 448. South Bay, 679. If you're down in Long Beach, San Pedro, Paramount, Downey, that area, Compton, 639. And if you're in Orange County in the 714 area code, and the 619 area code, you're 750. If you're in the 213 area code, you're 448. There are so many numbers. You know, this whole world is just filled with numbers these days. Have you noticed about that? Where are we going with the ELF? Are we doing anything to counter this problem, Bob?
I keep hearing these rumors. I know that there are some telemetry links in the United States using similar frequencies around 10 hertz. Tremendous problem has existed, and this is how do we talk to our nuclear subs? Mm-hmm. So the scientists at large were mounting programs called Project Sanguine, Project Seafarer, Project Pisces, and they were going to put a 3,500-mile-long antenna up in Wisconsin and broadcast around 76 hertz and hope that they could get a couple of 100 feet through the salt water to give the launch orders. It was discovered recently. Why the figure 76 hertz? We had sort of stolen it from the Soviets because that was one of the bad guys, and it had been a case of reverse intelligence worked on our own people. But fortunately, a lot of environmentalists sort of put the kibosh to this, and we're looking at more exotic ways to communicate underwater, and I do believe the Soviets are ahead of us on this problem also. But yes, it's here. We have to live with it. Smallpox is gone, but ELF is back.
ELF is back. Some of the other effects of ELF, it does some strange things to the atmosphere, does it not?
When you put that much energy into any type of a closed system, the ionosphere, the jet wind paths, etc., don't forget that the transmitters at Riga and Gomel were estimated to have a peak power of 40 million watts.
And we only have 5,000 watts at this radio station, so that'll give you an idea.
Is that why I can't get you on the road?
That's it.
Pay your bill.
We're just a little teapot.
Okay.
Everybody listens to it, but we're never less teapot.
When you put that much energy into the atmosphere, you're bound to heat up some of those ducting paths in the ionosphere. There are two possible ways of transmitting energy around the globe. One is the old bounce theory that was dear to our hearts when I was in college. The other is that the energy can actually be trapped in certain layers of the heaviside layer, and like a light pipe will come a certain direction and then dump off depending on the physics of the sunspot activity, etc. We'll talk about this a little bit in the seminar next weekend. But at any rate, yes, it's here. It's very real. I think it has been disturbing the ecology in our entire biosphere for a number of years. The weather patterns have certainly been unusual.
Well, there's a lot of data to suggest that something outside of nature is happening. For instance, we look at last year. We already looked at the record cold temperatures that are coming down this year. very, very early in the northern tier of states.
Exactly.
It seems to me, if this pattern exists, which is not natural, I mean, you can go back through all of the patterns of the way nature has run weather. We didn't see a year like last year.
There really is no historical precedent, at least.
And for us to sit around and think that that's just happening because, God wanted it to be that way is a little dumb, I think. Whenever we can see this electromagnetic disturbance going on, we can measure it. And politics or whatever stops us from doing anything about it, or perhaps inability to do anything about it. But it seems to be there. Do you predict or portend another terrible winter?
I don't know. I hope not.
It's hard to say, but I mean, we're seeing the electromagnetic disturbance continue.
Most of these Soviet and domestic plans seem to backfire eventually, and maybe they've learned not to do it anymore. We're still selling them wheat.
I think that was probably one of the basic reasons they did it, was to move water up into their agricultural lands. But
who knows?
It has a tail end which ended up in the United States. So it's a very complicated process. You're ready to talk to some of our people? I know they want to talk to you.
Sure.
I haven't begun to ask you all the questions I want, but I don't want to forget my friends out there because they're smarter than I am. And Sal is one of them. Hello, Sal. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Bill. And your friend's name again is?
Bob Beck.
Bob Beck, yes, sir. Yeah, God, it's a real honor to be in touch with you. I want to get this by real fast in terms of my intro. Bill Jenkins, to me, is the pinnacle of all talk radio. And I am so pleased that you are on an hour earlier. I don't know where to write first, but I want to push you and support you because I think you are where it's at in terms of talk radio. Okay?
Do I know you? How much did that cost me for you to say that?
No, you've got a real friend over here, and you're going to be finding out about that more in the future.
Thank you.
What I want to cover is about almost 2 years ago, I don't want to mention the program, it was on KBC on a talk show.
That's okay.
I called up, and when the big MX thing was happening, I called up and I said, oh, come on. I mean, that stuff is so antiquated. You must really understand that. How could anybody not understand that it was such an antiquated situation? I said, can't you see that there's other ideologies going on out there, other technologies that are much more advanced, and it's not even being known to the public. I think it's criminal that the public is kept in such ignorance, but that's a whole topic in itself. The thing I wanted to speak to Bob about is two things. I wanted to make a statement and ask a question about this one topic. The greenhouse effect and the weather control situation is something I've been really surmising for a long time, and I feel that the new information I've been getting as a result of your program is really enlightening, and it explains some feelings that I've had for a long time about it. The one book that I wanted to mention on the air was The Survival of Civilization by John D. Hamaker, Hamaker, with annotations by Donald A. Weaver, Weaver. And The Survival of Civilization is a very excellent book that goes in depth about why the carbon dioxide and the greenhouse effect and what to actually do about it. And I'm only mentioning it because of that, because he's got a solution. I've heard people complain about it and talk about it, but I haven't heard much solutions other than going to Mars and living over there or that kind of a thing.
Your question for Bob then is concerning the greenhouse effect, right?
The greenhouse effect and what basically...
What can we do about it?
He's got on that topic.
Okay.
And then I wanted to say one other thing after that.
All right, Sal, I want you to make it quick. There are a lot of people on the line, but we'll go ahead and try to...
I'm going to make a quick answer. I don't know.
Okay.
Boy, that'd help us out a lot.
Okay.
Okay, and then...
Of course, I've heard Lowell Ponte's versions of this, and I've talked with a few people who are investigating it, but I just frankly don't know.
I think one of the quickest things that we can do, and maybe, Bob, you will agree with me, is to stop burning fossil fuel to create our energy.
Absolutely.
And I think we're on the threshold of that. So we're seeing a whole new day dawn on that, although the power bases don't like it.
There was a brand new patent issued to a fellow named Marks, M-A-R-K-S, in April of this year. That's a solar panel about 3 by 4 feet that should power an entire house. It's a number of little micro arrays. It's about 80% efficient. All of this technology is right on our doorstep today, and I'm looking forward to no more fossil fuels.
Next week we will have John Bedini here.
Well, great.
Who seems to have an answer for us. It's your test out, and he has gotten it into solid state, so...
I've been a visitor in his lab, and he's certainly on the right track.
And we're talking about no fossil fuel here. We're talking about no fuel at all. And we're excited about what he is doing, but time will tell.
To conclude, Bill?
Yes.
I'd like to, first of all, indicate that I had a friend of mine that I was a witness to this device that was most unusual, and I'd like to talk to you about it. And he was bothered by the local government, and I couldn't understand why, but he had made this incredible breakthrough. And basically, he explained it. He said, anytime that you antiquate an existing system, you're ready to get shot. And I'd like to talk to you about this and get you a copy of the book I just mentioned, and I'd like to know how I can get in touch with you off the air,
Just call me here at the radio station. I'm here from 9 to 4 every day, and totally accessible.
Okay, well, I will be reaching you then.
Okay.
Okay, thank
you very much. We'll be back to Bob Beck, you, and we're talking about science tonight.
Just shortwave receiver, and sure enough, there's a rather interesting sound coming out. What exactly is that supposed to be?
This was a Navy transmitter at Dixon, California, and it was a beep, 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 and a burst of white noise. And at the time of the flap, when the ELF problem developed in Eugene, Oregon, Dr. Rick Tell, who's the Western Regional Director of the Environmental Protective Agency, said, well, we think that this is the signal that's causing the problem, which, of course, it was not. That was the significance of that comment.
Mm-hmm. Do you know that it's still on there?
Well, I check it every year or so, and I wasn't aware it was still on. No,
I heard it beep, beep, beep in the background.
Yeah, you want to hear this?
Yeah, could you?
Put it on.
That's it. You got it.
And it's coming in very strong. It's at plus 30 decibels.
Oh,
on
excellent.
sideband, it sounds like this.
You got it.
You've got it.
And it's right at 4717, so it's whatever it was, it's still there.
Megahertz. Yes, exactly. Well, hey, thank you very much for that. I feel like I'm listening to an old friend.
They're still out there.
By the way, this was not the cause of the problem back in Oregon.
And that music means that we have got to go, take a break for news, but we'll be right back with Dr. Beck after the news. Awesome, but in itself beautiful whenever you apply it in the right way. As is the way science has always been. It can be beautiful or it can be awesome, right, Bob?
Right on.
And we're open to talk to you. We have Paul on the line, I think. Right now, is that Paul? Yeah. Paul, you there?
Hello, yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Bill. I'd like to ask Bob a question. A friend of mine takes the McKeever investment letter, and he said that about a year ago or so, they mentioned some of the things about the weather control, and that President Carter sold the Russians a ELF generator or something of sort, one of the largest ones available. Or I don't have the details on it, unfortunately, and I was wondering if you knew anything about it.
I hadn't heard that before.
I don't know why the Russians would be wanting to buy one from Jimmy Carter, being that they have them over there in the first place. I doubt if Jimmy ever heard of it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm going to try and get a copy of that, and maybe I can attend your lecture and show it to you or something.
A strange thing happened after I published some of this in 1977. When I saw the reprints of what I had written in a number of these little bulletins and newsletters, I could hardly recognize the original at all.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Typical press distortion.
Well, that's not press there.
Or newsletter, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, just anybody, I think, takes a body of material and they put out whatever it is that they want to put out.
Okay.
And it's kind of hard to, there's no way you control that. You make a statement, and if people take that statement out of context, take a first sentence, last sentence, middle sentence, or whatever it is.
I wish I had the copy of it here so I could, verify it more myself, or at least say what specifically it did say, but I just wanted to check on that.
However, I would suspect.
Paul, if you're coming to the little get-together we're having next weekend, I wish you'd bring that along if you can find it. It should certainly make some interesting commentary.
Go over where the get-together is going to be, would you?
Okay, I'm actually a little embarrassed to do this, but my friend Paul Andrews has put together a thing because we both feel that it's very significant. It will be Hidden Influences in Modern Health and Disease, an electromagnetic survival seminar. What we plan on doing is demonstrating a lot of these instruments that we used in the investigation and passing away perfectly free the circuit diagrams of this stuff so that attendees who are not electronically impaired can build their own goodies and go out and find out where the hot spots are. And this is going to be at the Los Angeles Airport Marriott Hotel on Saturday, October the 13th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And if you need information, and we will need reservations, call at area code 213-393-9405. Once more, that's 393-9405. And during this day, there will be a lot of slides, a lot of graphs. We might wire up some people and show them their brain waves on the scope and what can happen to them when these little boxes go on and off. We'll give you enough information to build your own stuff and go out there and do your own thing. We feel that that's the backbone of scientific method.
That's where it happens. The genius is among the people.
If we can't replicate these things, we might believe they no longer exist. So if you're interested in this, call 393-9405, and the folks will give you more details on it. But we should be seeing a whole lot of interesting things there.
Does that help you, Paul?
Yeah, that covers it, and I'll be there.
All right, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the information. It doesn't sound quite right, but who knows? You know, stranger things have happened, I suppose. We have Mamie on the line.
Hello?
Hello, Mamie.
These,
I don't know. What do they sound like? Can you describe them?
Like a very high-pitched tone.
Oh, that could be any number of things. Ringing in the ear, tinnitus, lack of certain vitamins, or it could be something that you're actually experiencing. An amazing thing is that a very, very few people have been established as being sensitive to these electromagnetic influences. And a lot of people who at one time, their peers thought that they were actually hearing something, it turned out that they really were responding to an actual objective stimulus. But I would have no way of knowing that without running some tests, and I normally don't do that.
Yeah, well, when I first started hearing them, I thought I was picking up earthquake frequency because what was happening was that usually a day or so before, when I would hear the signal, the next day I'd hear on the news that they were having an earthquake somewhere.
Well, far out. I worked on Project Migraine with Chris Bird in Washington, Library of Congress, and Charlotte King was the subject that we used here. And she was able to predict earthquakes about a day or two in advance by the sounds that she heard in her head.
Yeah.
And that has been fairly well replicated and established, and that project has been ongoing for about 3 or 4 years now. Maybe you're another one of those extremely sensitive persons.
Where is Charlotte now?
I believe she's still up in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, because it always happens right after I hear the frequency. There's always an earthquake. Now, two things that have happened. Sometimes when I would hear this high frequency in my left ear, normally I would hear about an earthquake in a foreign country. And usually in my right ear, it's usually here in California.
Would you do this for us? Leave your telephone number with the operator, and I'll pass it along to Chris Bird, and there's some people who would be definitely interested in talking with you about this.
Okay.
Believe us, the family here takes this seriously.
Okay.
Now, these things, I'm very, very impressed with some of the things that you were mentioning. Clarissa Bernhardt is still an amazing forecaster. If Clarissa ever calls me and says, "Get out of town, I'm leaving,"
you got it.
But these things do seem to happen, and if you've got that tendency going, I think it's worth checking into.
You should be one of the shamans or holy ladies.
Well, I don't know. That's what my, because I had this checkup with my doctor, not to keep you on the line because others are calling, but I remember once I was in the hospital on the 5th floor, and right after surgery, I was so sensitive to the sound of the machine, my doctor had to move me to 2 different rooms. And she said, I was picking up the sound of the laundry room, and she said the laundry room was in the basement, and I was on the 5th floor.
I believe you, because there's enough rotating magnetic equipment like motors and blowers in that laundry room to permeate an entire building. We're going to show you next weekend how you can detect these things and make them audible. They're normally hidden, but with electronic pickups, it makes them very, very obvious and easy to detect.
Yeah, the nurses thought I was crazy.
Well, I don't think you are.
I don't think you are. Maybe what we're going to do is put you on hold here as we go to a commercial cluster.
Okay.
And give the name and address there, and then we get back to you.
Okay, sure, thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you very much. I'm Bill Jenkins, with me, Dr. Bob Beck. Hear a woodpecker sound?
Okay, let's see what this sounds like if you tune across the shortwave band and find out where it's...
Now, what is that sound doing, Bob?
What we have here is a little pocket device which puts out a magnetic pulse, which has a range, the one that I have in my hand here, which is about half the size of a pack of cigarettes, has a range of about 3 feet. And these things come from West Germany, and they are built to reconstruct the good vibes. See, we're totally swamped with this electromagnetic interference. These things are programmable to set out frequencies that cause your left and right hemisphere to synchronize, etc. And the instructions for the people in West Germany who are sensitive to this, and by the way, we understand that politicians, people who have to remain conscious at the switch, airline pilots, etc., carry these. When they feel that slight dissociation or depression or loss of attention or mild loss of consciousness, like a petit mal or a grand mal seizure that could be caused by any number of things, including signals such as the woodpecker, they simply turn one of these things on, and within a few minutes they're stabilized again. We'll demonstrate these at the seminar next weekend, give away perfectly free schematics so you can go to Radio Shack and build your own. And a lot of people need things like this.
What does the woodpecker do to me if I don't have one of these defense devices around me, or some other function, perhaps? You can do it mentally as far as that goes if you understand how to do those things. But what does it do to me?
Again, there are two schools of thought here. Until quite recently, it was felt that the only radiation which had psychophysiological effects or physiological effects on plants, animals, and human beings would be either thermal radiation, something that heated you up like a diathermy machine, or ionizing radiation that would sort of disturb your genes and chromosomes, like X-rays, cosmic rays, atomic fallout, etc. So our health officials set very, very high levels for these signals in industry and around radio transmitters and electromagnetic sealing devices for making plywood, etc. And the Soviets have traditionally had a signal level that's much, much lower than that's accepted as a standard in the United States. Now, if you're one of about the 30% of people who are sensitive to this type of an influence, in the case of Eugene, Oregon, it was bringing on mild epileptic-type seizures. There was one stretch of highway reported up there where people in broad daylight, perfect weather conditions, would sort of nod out, go to sleep at the wheel, drive off the highway and into a telephone pole. There were people falling into machinery during this critical period of the spring of 1978.
We had a little town that everybody went bonkers up there.
Yeah, Corvallis, the seat of the university. And at that time, this was absolute magic. It was heresy to feel that... Well, let's backtrack here a second. You're probably aware that back in the 60s, there were psychedelic nightclubs that used strobe lights as part of the lighting effect, psychedelic lighting. Unfortunately, if these strobe lights were flashing at particular rates, known as the epileptic flicker rate, the customers, those who had tendencies toward epilepsy or had it in the family, would have mild seizures, and there were a lot of lawsuits. So they had to tune these strobe lights to benign frequencies. Everyone knows about epileptic flicker rate photic stimulation. Everyone knows that there's such a thing as a heart pacer that puts out a very small electrical pulse that times the beating of your heart. This is essential for people who've lost that natural ability.
Even sound can do that.
Absolutely. But very few people, until I would say the last 5 or 6 years, have recognized that these electromagnetic pulses, these little H vectors, B vectors, these are engineering terms for magnetic as opposed to electrical stimulus, can have that same effect on a certain significant portion of the population. Now, In Eugene, Oregon, a number of people who had had absolutely no history of epilepsy were put on Dilantin, which was a drug that controlled seizures. Now, this was absolutely unheard of medically before these massive episodes of electromagnetic interference suddenly fell upon us out of the clear blue sky.
From Riga.
Well, yes. So to answer your question, fortunately everyone is not sensitive to this. We think about 35% as a minimum, maybe 50% as a maximum. The metaphor here would be that many years ago I dated a lady who had rose fever. And when we went to a dinner party one time, she had to take her parabenzamine to keep from having an allergy attack at the dinner table. So she was a little bit sleepy. If 100% of the people on this planet had rose fever, we wouldn't have rose gardens. So the same thing is happening. We believe that the situation has begun to straighten itself out because people have adapted, just as insects adapted to insecticides and DDT. We're getting a little bit tougher in the face of all of this electromagnetic pollution. But for those people who are extremely sensitive to it, like our previous caller, something has to be done, and we'll be talking about this at great length.
Well, the question comes to my mind, is that an overt act that's happening on the part of the Soviets, or is it just part of something that they're doing over there, and we just happen to be getting the tail end of it?
I really don't know. This has come up for discussion in high places on many an occasion. Here, there are about three schools of thought. Number one, since the pulse repetition rate of the Soviet woodpecker is exactly 10 hertz, and since 10 hertz is a benign frequency, most of the problems in Eugene were caused by the heterodynes of this with power line frequencies, other rotating equipment. Should they drop that to just below 7 hertz, it would pick up a vast segment of the population and probably cause tremendous damage.
Well, 7.85 are really right down.
Well, 7.83 is the good guy. About 6.67 is the bad guy. It causes nausea, dissociation, mild lapse of consciousness, extreme anxiety, depression. Well, by the way, we'll be talking about brain tuners next weekend also.
We'll talk about those tonight, too.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Well, that's for later. Shall we see who else is on the line out here?
All right. I think we have Adam on the line. No, Adam? I believe that's you.
Yeah.
Hi, Adam.
Hi, Bob. First of all, Bill, I want to tell you I agree with Sal 100%.
Well, thank you very much.
Me and my next-door neighbor both back you 100%.
Good.
And, Bob, you were talking about how these certain waves got people sick, in Oregon. And I get these quote-unquote wonderful headaches. Would that be caused by the waves? Am I picking up these waves and they're causing...
Gee, I don't know. I don't want to practice medicine, particularly on the radio, but it's possible. And there are things you can do about that. I dare say you've had cytotoxic testing and whatever else. I'd have to know a lot more about that, but yes, it is possible. And no, I don't know what it is in your particular case.
Because aspirin doesn't seem to help.
Uh-huh. Have you done any testing at all, Adam?
I'm only 13 years old.
Oh, my.
No, I haven't done any testing at all.
There's so much speculation on headaches. Do you have migraine or cluster or tension headaches or et cetera, sinus headaches? I really don't think we should go into that.
Well, that woodpecker sound you just played.
Yeah.
It kind of just, pinged just right. It kind of hit me.
You got it.
Yeah, sort of weird.
Shall we play it again?
No, please.
Okay, you got it.
I was going to say, do you know if there's any specific type of people that were affected by these waves?
Well, apparently the more sensitive a person is, the more signal he gets, and also the more noise. And you just might be hypersensitive, like I was when I was your age.
Well, if it has any bearing, see, I'm a psychic and also a medium.
That has a lot of bearing.
It has a great deal of bearing.
Yeah.
And congratulations to you at 13 to understand that. And,
thank you.
And know what's going on. I really tip my hat to you. I hope you use that to your benefit and the benefit of mankind.
Oh, thank you very much. I plan to. So you can't really say anything about my headaches.
I wouldn't dare.
Oh, okay.
How could we do that, Adam? Do you want to talk to somebody?
Well, I just thought it might be a point.
What are some pointers he can look for here, perhaps, Bob? That we
Are they periodic? Do they tend to cluster around 4 in the morning, or is it in the afternoon, or are you in bright light, or are you inside, or have you just eaten dinner and had milk with your diet, which causes a lot of vasoconstriction? There's so many variables here.
Well, I happen to have one right now.
Okay.
That's because you're listening to this show.
It's usually, though, during the day, usually sometime in the morning, about 8 o'clock or so.
That's a pretty consistent common denominator, an 8 o'clock attack, as it were?
Yeah, while I'm walking to school.
Maybe you don't want to go to school.
Right. Well, it's usually then, and it's usually kind of like I wake up in the middle of the night, and sometimes I can't sleep. But
the middle of the night, is that midnight or is that 3?
Well, yeah, 3 or...
3 o'clock is an unusual time for... a lot of people get up at 3 o'clock, and they're awakened for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons for that.
This was one of the problems that was almost pandemic at the onset of the woodpecker. People would wake up around 3 or 3:30 in the morning, could not get back to sleep.
Yeah.
But as soon as the sun came up, they could sleep till noon with absolutely no problem. Okay, now that could be electromagnetic perturbance there.
Because I'd wake up with these marvelous headaches, and I just, I'd take aspirin, and I'd just kind of wait for it to work, and it wouldn't work. I'd still have these headaches, and I'd end up staying up reading a book or something.
You have to learn how to get yourself into the alpha state. That'll help you solve that problem. Do you know how to do that?
No, not particularly. I've read, I don't know if you know of it. You probably do, but I've read Seth Speaks.
Oh, yes. Ian Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I read that whole book.
Tell you what I want you to do, Adam. Next week, I'll be here Monday through Wednesday. I get here about 9 o'clock, and you can just call the station, and it'll get you through to me.
9 in the morning or 9 at night?
9 to about 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon, depending on whatever's going on around here.
I see.
And I'd like to talk to you a little bit, and I'll give you a few exercises that'll let you get yourself into the alpha state.
Okay.
And then there are some other things you can do if that doesn't work.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
All right, Adam.
Bye-bye.
And best of luck on those headaches. Those things can be very, very terrible.
Oh, tell me about it.
That 3 o'clock waking, there are a lot of reasons for that may not be necessarily electromagnetic. It's kind of
I know.
a mystic time.
That opens a whole Pandora's box.
We were into that a little bit last week, and certainly we get into that a lot. And we're going to get back into what Mr. Dr. Robert Beck has for you in just a moment. I'm Bill Jenkins. It's Dr. Robert Beck. We're talking about ELF. We'll talk about free energy. We'll talk about whatever happens to be on your mind. What about free energy, Robert?
Well, I think it's right around the corner. I've felt that for a number of years now, but the things I'm seeing today are a lot more promising than the ones 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Well, we just happen to have a young man who has really got his feet wet into free energy on the line.
Hello, John.
John Bedini is with us. John, hello.
Hello, Tom, and hello, Bob. How are you?
Hi there, buddy.
How are you both?
How's your free energy device working?
Well, I sit down here in a cold garage because it's the most silent place in the world. But let me just bring some good tidings, as I may say, to the people out there in the radio audience, that we are basically on the verge right now of producing solid-state units in small form, which can do anywhere between 500 and 2,000 watts.
Oh, beautiful, John. Beautiful.
Let's put that into something I can understand, John.
Okay.
If we've got 2,000 watts. You say 2,000 watts?
Yeah, anywhere between 500 and 2,000 watts without any depletion on one battery.
What? How many watts do I use in my house? You've been over there.
I think, Bill, you're up around 8 to 10 kilowatts.
Work harder, John.
Your device is not going to help, John.
Of course. No, it's a matter of the size of the unit. Is very important. I also want to make a very strict point out there to the people who want to deal with free energy, that this type of energy, number one, is negative type I think during the Colorado conference at Colorado Springs, unfortunately, Bob, I didn't see you there, but I did hold a little box in front of maybe 500 engineers.
I heard about it from Ken.
Uh-huh. And I called a very, very good engineer out of the audience who works with the aerospace industry. I think you know who that is.
Sure I do.
And he did a report. Now, if it wouldn't have been for a clip lead burning off his circuitry, his batteries were already past 20 hours, driving 115-volt light bulbs and running motors and running quartz beam lights, which probably
is a hard thing to do.
Yes. Okay, but...
is that paper, John, by the way, I've got a copy of it.
Yes.
It's fascinating reading it. Is it available any place?
Yes, that is under a different name. It will be available very shortly through the Tesla Book Company. I do not have the name, but the original name of that paper was A Visit to John Bedini.
Yeah,
okay.
I've got it.
Are you topping your original effort there? That was pretty fantastic.
Bob, we have taken that effort. I think Bill very nicely said at the beginning of the program that there were people involved who came out and saw a new type of generator and who saw that something like 40 watts was being put in and something like 82 was being delivered.
Right, I think you told me about this.
Yes. Of course, it's been very painstaking. I must say to the people out there and to you too, Bob and Bill, that it's been very painstaking in the effort to make this available. Okay?
Well, you've done a beautiful job.
To the people, and I just want everybody to know out there that, the cooperation on my part will be 100% towards this to them all.
Well, you certainly made a beautiful impression on the Atlanta conference, and we got nothing but good news about you from Colorado, so keep it up.
Well, you too, Bob. I also did want to bring up one point for the audience out there, that Dr. Beck here has made great contribution in understanding exactly where this free energy may occur, okay? We are dealing with something here that is very peculiar. It's a very cold energy. It will suck your body heat out. It will, we have demonstrated putting 500 to 600 watts on a transformer with this type of energy through special inverter-type circuits, which are solid state, and the resistors get very cold instead of very hot.
Good grief, we're almost into the scalar domain.
Oh, yes. The one claim that I made, I will be talking more about that on the program next week, is that there is no plus and there is no minus in this dimension. We are talking about a battery, which there have been several patents on, that they do alternate, even though they show you a positive and negative potential.
Well, I'm certainly going to be listening next week.
Well, I only do this because I see the vast need for this energy to be opened up to the world, and I just hope that it's used for good and not for bad.
You know, John, one of these days, when it's all over, one of the most incredible stories that can be told, and I wish I could tell it now, but I can't, is the enormous problem about a young man who comes along and can give the world free energy. The problems with the politicians, the bureaucrats, the bankers,
the telephones, you name it.
And the they.
And plus the sickness that goes along with it.
And the sickness that goes along with it. And here comes the IRS, and here comes this group and that group. Don't you dare upset the apple cart out there by giving the world free energy. Now, Nikola Tesla was not able to survive.
That's right.
When he decided to give the world free energy. He was destroyed by the banking interest.
I think so, but I think, too, Bill, that Nikola Tesla to this day is alive, and that you're getting just a very little short message from him right at this point in time. I do have to make a very important statement.
Go ahead and make it.
Bob Beck is probably one of the most versed men as far as all the papers that I have ever went through in this particular field, as far as ELF goes, as far as what these waves can do to you in the microwatt levels. But also you must remember, Bill, you have two magic boxes on your speakers. They do the same thing.
I have the Bedini speakers over
Oh, they are fantastic, aren't
yes,
they?
he has those two little chips, Bob,
Oh, yes.
on his speakers, which actually do affect the biological system. And we've known this for years in amplifiers, that if you could create what you would call the hyperwave in the hi-fi industry, that it would affect the biological system. And this would cause people to feel good about the music that they were listening to.
You know, it's an amazing thing if I can get on that. In fact, I was just doing it this afternoon, playing some of the tapes I have. ABC did the did the entire Olympics in stereo sound. And I have the tapes of the raw ABC feed, and I love to play it in stereo sound with the Bedini speakers.
Oh.
But I love to watch the reaction of my guests that are enjoying it. It's a big screen TV with this magnificent sound system that John put in, and it really sounds like you're down at the Cinerama Dome. It's unreal. And when it's over, they get upset.
I love it.
Or whether we're playing Raiders from the Lost Ark or whatever it is, the same thing happens because something happens to you whenever you're enjoying this moment. And it's more than just the sound, and it's more than just the visuals that you're seeing.
Psychoacoustics and scalar waves and all that good stuff. Maybe we'd better talk about that.
You're just being penetrated there. That's
yeah. Bob, if I may make one comment, and then this is your program.
Yeah, your week is next week.
You're talking to our Dolak also.
But I would like to explain to the audience out there just for a very short period here, and I don't mean to take much time. The speakers are not mine. The boxes are.
Okay, thank you.
Even though these speakers utilize the same new semiconductor that you will be very shortly is going to hit the marketplace. We have made great breakthroughs in this. We can now, if I may just throw this in there, Bob, and sometime, and Bill knows of this, and a few psychics who have been on the program also know of this. You can have explosions without any nuclear fallout whatsoever with this type of energy.
It happens all the time.
We've had two such explosions, and we're not doing that anymore. But
by the way, John, why don't you be our guest next weekend at the little workshop on these influences in health, and call down at 393-9405 and tell them you're going to be on board. We're going to be demonstrating some electronic equipment that will be kind of the New Age survival kit and giving out a bunch of schematics. So come on down and join us.
Well, I'd be glad to, and if Bill would have me along, I'll go with him.
Oh, far out. That'll be from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. next Saturday, October the 13th. So
that's 10?
10 till 5 at the Marriott Airport Hotel. And anyone else who wants any information on this, call that number again, 393-9405, and we should have an interesting time.
Oh, yeah. I cringe every time I think I have to get on a freeway.
John, you get to drive whenever we go together.
Yeah, I just cringe because it's hell to be behind a diesel Cadillac, you know? Trying to make it up the hill when it would have been so much simpler to have 4 storage batteries powering that car that never went dead.
I think there's a subliminal message in there somewhere.
Yes.
What we're talking about is a car with an electric motor that has all the energy you need that you never have to charge up.
That's right. And
that's around the corner.
And what you must state out of all this,
consternation of a lot.
right, is this was built by Tesla, Dr. Tesla, did have such a car, and he did have such a remote-controlled boat. But unfortunately...
He had the Pierce Arrow.
Oh, yes.
That he drove all over western New York.
80 miles an hour.
And with no fuel whatsoever. He took out the Pierce Arrow motor, and he had an electric motor in it.
Far out.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that car is in Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It is still here. Maybe we can display that one of these days.
But anyway, Bob, I just wanted to tell you that I've done a little bit of work with some of your things, and that you are absolutely 100% in telling the people the truth.
Well, thanks
over this, because it's a mandatory thing now that any of these little frequencies that happen to come along will disturb people, not only physically, but can create a lot of mental illness.
Oh, by the way, Paul just passed on the word that Colonel Virgil Armstrong and his wife Sharon will be at the seminar next week, too, so it'll be sort of old home week.
Posty. Yes, indeed. That's one of my favorite people.
Hey, John, keep it up, and I'm back in town for a few weeks, and I want to come out and see you again.
Well, you're welcome anytime you want, you know that.
Right.
And we've all been working on the same thing. And I've just been real silent. I've had a few difficulties, but...
You? Silent?
Yeah. But, no, I just want to bring the encouraging word to the people out there. It's just around the corner.
Well, I believe it.
All right, John, thank you so very, very much.
A salute.
You're welcome.
You got the shot there.
Yeah.
John, you'll be with me from 9 to midnight next week. We'll talk about free energy. And, of course, there's a lot more with you that we can talk about. But I'm looking forward to that.
We'd hoped to raise Tom Bearden tonight, but we can't get through to him. So, well, at any rate, he's here in spirit.
It is no surprise at all.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, John, thank you very much. I'm Bill Jenkins with Dr. Bob Beck, and that was John Bedini, who will be our guest next week. Very important young man in the scheme of things. We'll see you in a moment. Bedini, who will be on with me a little bit later, and we have Randy on the line. Hello, Randy.
Hello.
Where are you calling from, Randy?
From Northern California.
Well, I thought so.
Yeah. And
glad to have you aboard.
Yeah, right. I'd like to speak to Dr. Beck.
I'm Bob. Hi, Randy.
Bob. Hi, Bob. This actually happened to me. I would like, an explanation of what happened between a 100 light bulb that in this car. Okay, I have it written down. I'm so nervous.
I don't blame you. I'm nervous myself.
We're all nervous here, so...
Well, after you explain the free energy device, it makes me a bit,
Go ahead. Just be comfortable. Take your time.
You're with friends.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't care. We'll help you along if we can.
Okay. It's a 100 light bulb. This happened a couple years ago. And I was in this room with the 100 light bulb on, and this car was starting its engine, and then it was draining its batteries for 5 minutes. And the car's batteries were just draining, and it shouldn't have started after it was draining for 5 minutes. But when the engine started, simultaneously the light bulb was draining very low dimmer, like about 20 watts instead of 100 watts. And there was a foggy, hazy day outside. This all happened in 7 minutes. So why did the light bulb dim less than the battery needed the electricity? I guess the batteries needed the electricity.
Are you wondering if there was some sort of connection between the battery drain of a car outside the house and the dimming of your light bulb?
Randy, that isn't as odd a question as you might think. I was an old UFO buff for many, many years, and there had been occasions around Levelland, Texas, etc., when a UFO was sighted. The automobiles would sort of stall, and it was hard to start them, and lights would dim. And at that time, it was postulated that somehow these things, whatever they might be, were actually draining power from the electrical systems, and I guess Puharich believes that this is what caused that major blackout in New York City a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't say that any of this is impossible. Now, my friends in the scientific community might excommunicate me for this, but I'd say that maybe that was a very shrewd observation on your part.
Well, okay, but when the light bulb was on when the car was draining its batteries.
Right.
and then and when it started, it went boom, and it zoomed up, and the battery, before it zoomed up, the moment of the time, the light dimmed to a dimmer, and then it went on.
Was the light on a silicon-controlled rectifier dimmer switch on the wall, or was it just on a plain old on-off switch?
No, it was plain old switch, right.
I just don't know. I would sure like to have seen that. I wonder if anyone else in the neighborhood reported dimming lights.
Well, I didn't. I only noticed it for myself.
Right.
It appeared that he stepped on the accelerator all the way down to the floor and then started it up. But I said to myself repeatedly, this car will not start because it drained all its batteries.
Sometimes when you rest a battery, it'll pick up enough surface charge to kick it over that one last time. But
it rested for a minute, and but the light drained.
I got you. I don't know, but man, keep on looking. You know, it's these little clues from which we learn the most.
Have you noticed anything else in that area unusual in an electronic way? Where do you live?
Well, this was in Norwalk about a few years ago.
Yeah, that's not too far from here.
Yeah.
Anything can happen in Los Angeles, you know.
Right.
But it was sort of weird to me, and I just wanted to have an explanation on that.
Well, thanks for that, Randy. I don't really know what happened, but good grief, these are the things that I find the most fascinating.
Okay, Randy?
Okay, I thank you. Wait a minute. Was it Dr. Tesla?
Tesla, right.
The lines, 100 miles away. He had electricity going from one place to another without
I don't believe it was quite that far. Some of his experiments in Colorado Springs went a few thousand feet.
Well, he had some, in fact, they did for a long time up around Niagara, or right outside of Buffalo.
Oh, he was transmitting AC over regular light lines. Yes, that's true.
He was transmitting without wires there for a while, and they finally shut that down.
Well, can that be the case?
Well, it's hard to say. There was a totally different principle.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Randy. These young guys with inquisitive minds, I love them. And, that's what's going to make this world go around. Hello, Kent, you're on. What are you quizzing us about?
Hi, Bill. Well, I called up about the greenhouse effect subject that an earlier caller had brought up. And I've heard you talk about it, some time ago, and I've heard, read stories and reports of it, the theory, and I've heard, Lowell Pondy, he's an advocate of that theory.
Lowell Pondy, he's a friend of mine.
Well, I tell you what, it's very interesting, because Lowell and I have gone around and round with that on this show, but it's very interesting to notice that the latest flight of the space shuttle has put up a $40 million satellite to explore the greenhouse effect.
Yes, I'm going to be looking forward to that, because I heard
So finally the government is understanding that there is a greenhouse effect, yes?
Well, that there's a possibility of it, and there's something happening as a result of the fossil fuel emissions. But I heard a news report on a local news station 2 weeks ago that indicates, that brought up evidence that there's been a fallacy in the basic hypothesis of the greenhouse effect. And a basic element of the story that's been left out by the proponents of that theory. And it was and I had my doubts about the theory when I first heard it, and all along. And this report was of a major study here in California by Unfortunately, I just heard it go by on the radio, and I was busy, and I don't recall the institution. I needed to go to one of the universities or something.
What did they say?
The group of scientists decided to figure that they could get information on what's been happening since the advent of the use of fossil fuels, which was toward the end of the last century, by studying the growth rings of the redwoods in Northern California. Because they're, hundreds and thousands or a couple of thousand or more years old, some of those trees, and by cutting them across the trunk and studying their growth pattern of the rings, they could see what effect it's had. Well, since 1895 or so, the rings grew much larger, which indicates that the plants grew.
Kent, can I get you to hang on? Do you want to hang on for about 5 minutes?
Sure.
We're going to take a break for news, and we'll be right back. I want you to finish that story.
There's some interesting things about the growth rings of the trees in relation to the atmosphere, and we'll discuss those right after the news. I'm Bill Jenkins. It's Open Mind, the outer limits of science. A lot of people don't even know that science exists out there. We live in an incredible technological age, and for some reason or another, now, whether that's the fault of media or whether that's some sort of conspiracy, I don't know, there seems to be an effort to keep you in the dark and keep your head buried in the sand. And I don't know about you, but I just don't like my head in the sand. Sand doesn't fit too well in my ears, and I don't want to stay there. And, Bob, thank you very much for the work that you've been doing and the books that you've written and the papers and the lectures. And although you were a hard man to get a hold of and get you on the air, I've been trying
it
for 2
wasn't
years.
so bad now that I'm down here.
It's not
actually
so bad.
Enjoying it.
You know, it's a nice facility here.
Right. The coffee is great.
Hey, that's Foy out in the security lounge. Foy makes the best coffee in the world. Let's go back to our callers here. Well, wait a minute. I want to, before we do that, and I know we have Kent on the line, and Kent, we'll get back to you in just a second. You do something that we haven't touched on tonight, and I wish that you would spend a few minutes with us talking about brain tuning. This is kind of a controversial thing. Are you able to tune brains? Can I tune my brain?
Well, that was sort of a generic.
I know there are a lot of people that like to tune my brain.
Actually, it was the title of an article that appeared in the January 1983 Omni magazine. It described this marvelous little black box that Dr. Meg Patterson had brought from England that would quite literally cure almost any type of addiction, from heroin, morphine, cocaine, all the way to some tobacco smokers, all alcoholics, Valium, Librium. And I read the article and thought, oh, my goodness. But I was asked by a friend in Washington to stop in and visit the lady and see if there was anything that the chap could do in Washington to help her through FDA approval.
Forget that.
We got very fascinated with it, and I spent several months in the Biomed Library at UCLA researching it, and I found that these little devices had been used in the Soviet Union for about 30 years. They were in use all over Europe for addiction control, stress control, anxiety, depression, insomnia, addiction. Well, we said that. And so we had a number of these smuggled in. They sort of fell under the acupuncture laws, and you had to be a medical doctor.
You mean your people went to the Soviet Union and smuggled in some of their technology to the United States?
We sure did. We also bought these in Finland, Denmark, France, Germany, the Orient, England.
It's not to know that works the other way every now and then.
Right.
Yeah.
So we took these things apart, and we found that, sure enough, there were certain frequencies, spectra, that if applied to certain acupuncture points on the head, stimulated the production of neurotransmitters. The one that probably has gotten the greatest press is the beta-endorphin, the body's natural painkiller. The devices worked. It seemed like the people who were trying it had totally stalled out. After about 3 years, they had not produced one single prototype. So I built a few of these. Fortunately, I have a spectrum analyzer on my Apple computer. We were able to synthesize the precise frequencies that cause these very rapid reversals of neurotransmitter problems. And we've been making these things now for about a year and just getting astonishing results with them. And we'll talk about these again this next weekend. This isn't a medicine show, but if you want to get into far more detail on these things, call Paul's number at 393-9405, and we're doing a weekend on all of this and passing out schematics of a number of these devices so people can help themselves.
Well, I think it's amazing. You know, you mentioned that the box that you have there stimulates the creation of endorphins, which is the natural painkiller.
Right.
Dr. Patrick Flanagan's Neurophone is a mighty stimulator of endorphins. Are you familiar with the Neurophone?
Yes, I am. I have several of these that people have dropped off at my place, and let's not talk about that right now.
All I know, I remember I broke my foot, and I just happened to have the Neurophone over there, and I was messing with it because I wasn't going to go anywhere.
Okay.
To find out what that thing was doing. I never had another pain once with that, and one of the byproducts of it is endorphin stimulation. And I use it as a painkiller all the time. Don't ever have too many painful situations, but if I do, I go get it. So, we're using some circuitry here that is stimulating something.
Right. There are specific frequencies that stimulate well. The broad spectrum of them are just the neurotransmitters that you think you need at that particular time. And a tremendous amount of work has been done on this. At the Biomed Library at UCLA, we found about 300 references in the open literature. And I was amazed that these were not available in every drugstore. But the answer soon became apparent. The traffic in addictive Valium and Librium alone is $13.6 billion. Traffic in alcohol, tobacco is up in the 30 billion.
The establishment does not like us talking about using a Hertzian wave to create endorphins, which stops pain.
No, because a 98-cent transistor radio battery will last for a couple of months and cure 100 people, and instead of going to the doctor and buying pills, which is where the profit is, we just shouldn't know about the clean way to do this without side effects.
I don't know about you, but I really don't like putting those kind of chemicals in my body if I can resist the urge.
We have some of these floating around a movie studio here where some of the people have been on cocaine for a number of years, and they're totally clean. And before the brain tuner, they had tried, almost every hospital farm around to detox, and they were right back on it within a week.
But the brain tuner does, you do have quite a history of...
It has about a 35-year history of total success, and we're putting together a bibliography on this, which is free if there are any doctors in the audience that doubt this.
Now, if somebody wanted to talk to you about the brain tuner, particularly how it works in coping with drug addiction or alcohol addiction or any of these addictions that we all could get into. I get addicted to all different kinds of things every week, something.
We have a problem here. The device is not approved by the FDA, nor possibly will it ever be.
Well, no, it's preventative medicine, and of course the FDA won't
believe
preventative medicine.
That a consenting adult, an informed consenting adult, should have the constitutional right to experiment on himself. So we're selling it as an experimental device, and 100% money-back guarantee, and if it doesn't work, send it back. And we've only had 2 returned in the last year, and these were people that took them apart trying to make their own and sent us a box of parts back. Instead of the device, we still gave them their money back.
There you go.
But this is quite a story, and I think we'll touch on it next weekend.
All right. How do we reach you about finding out about those?
Okay, Paul has put together a seminar here that'll be Saturday, October the 13th from 10 till 5 p.m., 10 a.m., 5 p.m., and you can call 393-9405 for information. And what we're doing is putting out a tremendous amount of information and free circuit diagrams of how to build some of these detox-type devices. We won't be passing out diagrams of the brain tuner, but we definitely will be giving away diagrams of the magnetic pacers that counteract the ambient electromagnetic interference. But these are some of the fascinating things it's not really New Age science. They've been around since the turn of the century, and we're just been suppressed.
We're just now beginning to find out about those things. That's all it is. Kent, are you still on the line with us there? I know you've been hanging on for a long time.
Hello, Kent.
Oh, well, Kent, I got to put you back on. There you are, Kent.
Oh, hi. Okay, yes.
All right, I'm gonna ask you to hang on a couple of more minutes while I do something, and I promise you I'll get right back to you. Okay. I'm Bill Jenkins. It's Open Mind.
Well, at night, yeah, but I guess I don't know. I didn't. They didn't address that. I remember from biology. I don't remember. I think that the activity of the plants is greater in the daytime, so that the predominance would be what happens during sunlight. Although that would have to be checked. I'd have to check it myself.
Go ahead. I mean, I didn't want to...
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And it'd have to be checked
Don't have a plant in your bedroom.
Really?
Well, that's true, yeah.
Okay. I had been considering that for the oxygen. Maybe I might have been exactly wrong on that. I hadn't really gone much further than just thinking about it. But, okay, well, the plants do breathe in carbon dioxide, at least during the daytime hours, and exhale oxygen And so the extra carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere by the burning of fossil fuels has all this century unnoticed by anyone until the scientists cut down the redwoods in Northern California and examined the rings, the growth rings, and found them significantly larger since the beginning of the century. Have been feeding, the carbon dioxide has been feeding the plants, and in other words, it hasn't been unused. And so the additional collection, the content of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere must be far less, since a lot of it's being used up by plants. And the whole globe is covered by plants.
Far out. I love that, Kent.
Yeah, since the nature is actually using the extra carbon dioxide, the greenhouse effect is most likely is not going to occur. The concentration is just not nearly as great, the potential concentration is not nearly as great as predicted by those who have been the exponents of the greenhouse theory. In other words,
I think we got the picture there, Kent. Now, there's one thing that needs to be layered over that information, and that is that the good old planet Earth has been in a geological heat wave here for the last 80 years, and we're beginning to pull off of that heat wave.
I heard that.
And, of course, the heat wave is very good for the growth of plants. Now, you're going to have to factor that in with the slowly rising levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
Kent, I have one for you. Remember a few years ago when there was a tremendous concern over the depletion of the ozone layer because of fluorocarbons,
yes,
spray cans? It turned out that what we have now is a reverse effect. The ozone layer is in better shape than ever. And one of the theories was that the tremendous amount of electrical energy that had been pumped in by some of the Soviet over-the-horizon radars had stimulated the O3, and we now have a better ozone layer than we did previously.
You mean they've done us a favor?
It seems like that was another one of those accidents.
No, they'll be embarrassed.
You seem to be in. It's these little unknowns in the equation that will fool you every time.
And you remember the politicians didn't want us to build the supersonic jets because of the great damage it would bring to the ozone layer.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't.
And so they wouldn't let us build them, and we couldn't fly them. By the way, did you know that we couldn't fly the supersonic jets over the United States because of all of the sonic booms? But the military flies them over the United States all of the time. And there's not a supersonic boom or a hole in the ozone layer anywhere.
That's right.
And you can look for supersonic service across the United States from New York to Los Angeles because the entrepreneurs know exactly where the military has been flying them, and the congressmen, as usual, didn't know what they were talking about.
No, at least 90% of the time they buy the scare tactic because it buys votes, immediate votes, I guess. Right. And it gives them a new bureaucracy to play with at our expense. Yeah.
Well, that's the name of the game, develop a new bureaucracy.
Sure is. Well, listen, Bob, I'm very much interested in the seminar, and I'm going to see if I can get to that Saturday. I've got to check my budget, but...
hey, spread the word, would you?
Yeah, if I'll think about someone who might be interested. I know one friend of mine who might be, and I'll contact him.
I think the Xeroxing alone for all this information we're trying to get out to the public is going to run about a third of the entrance fee, but anyhow, the people will go out with something that they can actually use in their lives.
Well, thank you very much about the information about the rings. Let's layer over the heat wave that we've been enjoying globally. Heat wave, I'm using Lowell Ponte's term there.
Okay, Bill.
We're in a very warm period.
Yeah. Maybe you could talk about that on another show sometime. I'd be interested in hearing more about that. I haven't.
All right, I'll try to get Lowell on. He's one of my favorite people.
Yeah, he's good. Okay, Bill, listen, it's been a pleasure. And, Bob, just keep up the good work because she'll be out here listening.
Thank you, Kent.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. We'll be back to Dr. Bob Beck in just a moment. Open mind and welcome aboard. And I do want to thank you. I'll just take a moment to thank you. We have the new ratings, for every 3 months those come out. And thank you. This Saturday night belongs to us. And I'm so glad you're aboard and that you've been with us like that. It's beautiful to see that. We have Jack on the line. Jack, hello.
Hi there, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Malibu Jack here.
Hello, Malibu Jack.
Yeah.
You still riding that motorcycle?
Hi, Jack.
It wasn't even worth selling. I gave it away.
Oh.
I burned it out.
Okay.
Anyway, Bob, first of all, I want to say that I definitely do accept your speculation that we obviously are on the threshold of a bioelectromagnetic warfare with the Soviet Union, and
Threshold, we're in it.
Yeah, right. Now, I have an idea. I'm perfectly serious about this, on how we could turn the tables on them and give them a taste of their own medicine. Would you like to hear my idea?
Go for it.
Okay. Now, Bill, as you have said many times on your show, the human mind can do anything. Now, we won't need any mechanical transmitters as they are supposedly using. All we have to do is get a bunch of our great psychic minds together, and instead of wasting time walking on coals and bending spoons and predicting earthquakes, we get a bunch of these people together, and I'm not kidding, I'm serious here.
I didn't mind walking on coals. I think it was a waste of time.
I did it last month myself.
We get a bunch of people together and coordinate their minds together so that they can pick up these transmissions that are coming from the Soviet Union and deflect them or reflect them back to the Soviet Union and give them a taste of their own medicine.
That's already happened to them.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. That experiment has been done, and it proved to be successful, and it caused some changes over there.
Is that Tom Bearden's mind link?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the mind only puts out microwatts of power. An EEG is around 70 microvolts. It's going to take an awful lot of brain power to pay for 100-watt light bulb.
Well, the human mind can do anything, so let's give it a try.
Well, what you're talking about is unleashing the full potential of the human mind.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that, as a society, that we're able to cope with that kind of energy, if that comes along. I think it will come to us as we are able to cope with it. Obviously, we don't use it.
By the way, Jack, speaking of metal bending, tonight, the 6th of October, was the 100th PK party by our good friend Jack Houck, and he has taken this all over the world now, and believe it or not, this simple little thing like bending a spoon with some mental assistance has opened the mind of a lot of generals and admirals and people in high places in Washington.
Do you know how to reach Jack Houck? I
certainly do. Jack is probably listening right now, and I'll give you his telephone numbers, and he is one pioneer in these
I have
things.
so many inquiries as to, how to reach Jack Houck, because we talk about him here from time to time.
This very night, he was giving his 100th PK party down in Huntington Beach, Huntington Harbor, and I want to wish all those folks well. And,
all right, I'll get the number from you, and we'll check with Jack if it's all right to give it out, because I know there are a lot of open-mind listeners that want to go to one of these parties.
I don't think he'd want it given out.
Well, I wouldn't do it on the air without his permission.
He's on the faculty of JFK University now, and he's taken this just all over the world, and he's done just a beautiful job of documenting it, analyzing it, run metallurgy tests.
I wonder if he can do, or if he can learn to do, what Greta Woodrue can do. And that's take a spoon.
No, we're still here, Jack.
We're still right there, Jack.
Bill, one thing, keep up with that free energy device, and I'd like to get one attached to a new motorcycle I'm planning on building. I hear you got one over there from Germany.
You know what? The government shut that down over there in Germany, number one. And number two, they kept burning out the batteries on that, and they didn't know how to control the input of energy they were getting there. That's what Hans Niefer says. And so it's back to the drawing boards, and they got into so much bureaucratic hot water in Germany with that particular device. They were dealing with the power bases, and those are very strong people. They pay hardball.
Yeah. Well, we'll overcome it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No, it's on the line now. So
okay, thanks,
Jack.
Bye.
Thank you, Jack. But Greta will take the spoon and just shrink it. 25%.
I spent some time with her last month in Colorado.
Well, did she shrink them for you?
No, but we talked about it, and she and Dick and I are going to be doing a few seminars on brain tuners for her Millionaire Club people. And
well, she has a seminar coming up early next year. I don't know the date, and she has invited me to be there and speak, and I'm going.
Right, I'm invited too. I guess we'll meet again.
We'll meet again. I get to moderate the panel, and I'm sure that we're talking some high-level stuff, and I'm very delighted that she did want him to come along. All right, we have... hello, Blaine. Are you on the line?
Yes.
All right.
A few minutes past 10, you had a caller on the line, and he was telling you about this huge magnet that was sold or given to the Soviets during the Carter administration. Now, I can't recall the details on this, but this was not an ordinary magnet. It was.
No, I don't think we were talking about a magnet.
No, we definitely did sell a superconductive magnet to them for basic nuclear research, but this had nothing whatever to do with...
What was he talking about?
He was talking about an ELF-type transmitter, which is an entirely different kettle of fish.
Well, anyway, I had a question regarding this magnet. Since the delivery of this magnet to Russia by our friend, and I use that word in triple quotes, Carter, have you detected any unusual signals out of the Soviet Union since the delivery of that magnet?
Strange thing. I've been detecting these rather strange signals since about 1977, and we don't know where, or rather what the modality is that's causing them, but... we'll show you next weekend how to build your own device for detecting these anywhere, and strangely enough, a device you can build yourself from readily available parts will outperform some of these $300,000 superconductive squids that our government has been using for sensitive magnetometry. I've done this under test conditions a number of times in Washington and at other centers of research. And it's very, very simple to do, and I'm surprised that more people aren't really looking there themselves. When they're feeling a little bit out of sorts, they can check it out, find out whether it's objective, subjective, real, or actual.
Okay, this little black box, as it were, that stops pain, are you producing those, and are they for sale?
I'm making them on a very limited quantity.
How can one obtain them?
Well, call this number, 393-9405, and they're just a veritable storehouse of information, and you can build your own. Now, TENS units, transcutaneous electric nerve stimulators, have been, well, around since the turn of the century. Norm Shealy, who's sort of the father of the current generation of these, simply transistorized a device that you can still buy for $35 in barber supply stores that put an electrical signal into the body that reversed the pain gate phenomena, etc. And we'll talk about these and pass out some circuits next week at the seminar at the Marriott Hotel. So call this number, 393-9405, and you'll get it.
Okay, I sure will. And before I leave, I just want to say, Bill, we're very fortunate to have someone like you on the radio with such open mind. It's really a ray of sunshine.
Well, thanks so much.
Sure.
Thank you for that, and I... you say all of those nice things, but I certainly want to tip my hat to the management here and to the American Broadcasting Company who have let me do my thing.
Right.
And they have a lot of guts. Thank you very much, Blaine. Appreciate that a great, great deal.
Bill, before you take another one, I'd like to share an experience that my lady and I had several months ago.
All right.
People say, well, how does this affect me, and isn't it a little bit far offshore? We were having dinner in one of the most famous restaurants in Southern California. And this place has one desk for incoming reservation, people wanting seats, another one for seating, etc. And when...
the neighborhood Winchell store. Right?
Well, we found that after we were finally seated, that everyone in this restaurant was just eating like there was no tomorrow. And Diane looked at me and said, Bob, why are we gulping our food? We had some technology with us which quieted the place down, and pretty soon the owner and manager ran out and started screaming at the help. We were seated not too far from the service station. It finally occurred to me that they're actually using part of this ELF technology now in certain places to speed up the adrenaline reaction. When that happens, it's the fight or flight. You'll have to eat faster, get out of there. They can seat more people overnight at the tables. So the things that we thought a few years ago that were rather esoteric and secret apparently have trickled down to the commercial sector. And instead of subliminals, eat popcorn in your movies and television, you're going to be motivated by some of these magnetic fields And these are not...
It's quite a business. We had a marvelous chat one night with Dick Sutphin about the subliminals that are going on. And, you know, Dick has made quite a study on it.
I have some of his tapes.
And a lot of it is good. For instance, the subliminals that happen in department stores, which are telling people, don't steal or we'll catch you.
Right.
And their shoplifting rate goes way down. Subliminals to their employees, don't put your hand in the till because we'll prosecute you.
Right.
And that goes down almost 100%. Yes, you can speed up the body metabolism simply with electromagnetics in a restaurant. Why not? You know, I say why not. I mean, I can understand why they would want to use that.
It's here now.
The more people that sit in that table in the course of the evening, and you do have to be sensitive to these things, and you have to know what it is.
Right, and it's apparently contagious. The people who are sensitive give off vibes to the ones around them, and they all speed up. It's almost a mob rule consciousness linkage.
They don't like it when I come to a restaurant because I make an event out of it.
Uh-oh.
I move in. Or otherwise I'll stay home.
Can we break the rule and say, happy birthday, Diane?
We certainly can. Who's Diane?
Oh, she's a very special lady.
The lady that went to the restaurant with you and slowed everything
right.
down. Well, happy birthday, Diane. Tomorrow's mine. Big 5-0.
Well,
tomorrow.
You can't be all bad.
Well, she's a good Libra, and I can see that now. All right. We'll get to another caller in just a second. I'm Bill Jenkins with Dr. Bob Beck, and Diane is out there, too. And happy birthday to you, Diane. As we close in on hour 3 tonight of the Open Mind Show, my guest is Dr. Robert Beck, and we have A.E. on the line. Hello, A.E.
Good evening, Bill and Bob.
Is that what, do you go by the name A.E.?
Yeah, that's it.
Hello, A.E.
Hello.
Yeah. I'd like to comment on a statement made by a previous caller on the greenhouse effect.
Yeah.
I agree with what he's saying, but there's a fly in the ointment. One thing is that, how would you say, now they're destroying a lot of our forests and things like that for building houses and land developments and things like that. So we're losing a lot of our trees and things that would be doing one thing. And another part is our contamination of the oceans and fields that also has flora and fauna in it is knocking a lot of that out, too.
I know, it's absolutely abysmal.
And the other one I thought might be kind of interesting is kind of like dowsing.
That's always interesting.
Just like you can pick up an energy from a source, I also feel that you can douse an event. And this has to do with the woodpecker type influence where, well, are you familiar with Christopher Hills?
Yes, I know him.
And the little
University of the
box
Trees, yes, I'm very much aware of this.
You could put a picture in the little box to send energies to a different...
Right, this is radionics. By the way, this year I'm national president of the U.S. Psychotronics Association, and I know most of the competent people in this field.
Well, for the people who don't understand, a picture in a box, if the box is constructed and properly energized, can do incredible things.
Yes, it can, and that's another Pandora's box, and let's not open that one tonight. We'll be here until tomorrow.
Well, some people think, and there's strong evidence to suggest that that's how we lost the thresher, was with a photograph. And you can go on and on and on from there.
Yeah, and I've heard all of this, and
who knows?
It's basically your intention. It's some people feel that it's another form of prayer, and others feel that the boxes are actually putting out some type of energy. Now, I have to go down the middle here because I have friends on both sides of that camp, but if it's working, don't fix it.
Yeah, that's true. You don't want to fix a car that's already working good.
I think one of the secrets of the universe, A.E., is that healing works in spite of the theory of the healer, very seldom because of it. And yes, these things can work in the hands of a person who can focus that particular type of consciousness, which is what the world is all about. And yes, I'm very familiar with these devices.
Well, what I was getting at was with the Soviet transmissions, why couldn't they establish the same type of device to tune into an event? And this event could be set up by the different transmissions, one sending a signal one way and another one sending a signal around the other way, and the resultant frequency would be where the event would take place.
Set up a harmonic, a standing wave pattern at the distance.
Right.
This comes up a lot. Tom is quite up on the mathematics, Tom Bearden. We'd sort of hoped to have him on the telephone tonight, but
I lost his number. It's my fault.
But, yes, thanks for that contribution. Today was the first of the DOLAC, Dowsers of Los Angeles County, meetings after a long summer. And you might want to come down and visit. It's the first Saturday of every month at Plummer Park. And that's in Hollywood, about 6 blocks west of La Brea, on the north side of Santa Monica Boulevard. Good old Plummer Park. And every Saturday, a whole group of people who have similar interests to ourselves here meet down there, and you're going to get a potpourri of a lot of information. And John Bedini will be our guest. It's either the next one or the one after. So if you're interested in these things, come on down. The water's fine. You'll find a lot of your family.
Uh-huh.
That's the Dowsers of Los Angeles County, and you'll enjoy it. It's just one big happy forum for a lot of New Age goings-on.
Another one I wanted to bring up.
Make it quick, John. We've got a lot to go here.
Was the other caller that was talking about the ringing in the ears.
Mm-hmm.
This could also be a resultant from getting involved with the harmonics between several radio stations.
Well, it can happen. I've run a lot of tests on building sick houses, including the Capitol, the Sacramento Capitol building, that was sort of a monument to modern technology, except the secretaries couldn't stay in it for more than a few days without getting headaches.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about instrumentation for testing this yourself. Radio Shack $10 boxes where you can find these things and actually verify them, read them out scientifically at the conference. And if you want to know more about that, it's 393-9405, and it's coming up next weekend, and I think you'll find it very interesting.
Okay.
All right, A.E., thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate your contribution to that, and we have John on the line. Hello, John.
Hello.
Yeah.
Bob, this is a person out of your past.
Well, hello, John.
You've been in my business a couple of times. I guess the last time was about a year ago. And many years ago, you sold me an ion generator. And I guess I can give you my last name.
Go ahead.
Well, no, actually, no.
Well, okay. I don't know the rules around here, so.
No, John is all right. Go ahead, John. What's on your mind?
Okay. Anyway, talking about the picket fence or the woodpecker, many years ago I did some research in it and determined a few things about them. One thing, there seems to be, as you indicated, they operate at a pulse rate of 10 hertz per second, right on the money. And that, in fact, they're synchronous with our 60 cycles, if you wish.
Yeah, we know that. It's a little bit scary.
And the other thing is there seems to be 4 separate pulses, each one delayed. If you check the delay, it relates to the geographical position.
Right, the diversity paths, the great circle routes, and whether you're getting the direct or the reflected. John, why don't you call me at home tomorrow? I want to talk to you about this.
Okay.
I think I've had the same telephone number for about 30 years. So if you've got an old card, call me.
Yeah, I have that in the Rolodex, so I will. I'll give you a call tomorrow.
Hey, great.
You still in the Hollywood area?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm not going to be there tomorrow, but I will about Tuesday. I'm going down to the beach this weekend.
Okay. All right.
All right, John.
Very good.
Sounds to me like you two have a lot to talk about.
Oh, we'll touch base again.
I think so.
Thanks for calling.
Okay.
Bye. All right. Appreciate your call, John. We have Craig on the line. Hello, Craig.
Hi, Bill. Nice to talk to you again.
Huh? Were you up in Mariposa again tonight?
Yeah.
How are we coming in?
Well, it improved a little bit. It was pretty bad. In fact, I was going to say I'm real happy to hear you've got that extra hour. Sorry I missed it. And maybe that means you'll be getting on the network soon.
Well, we don't know.
If Dr. Demento can do it, Bill can do it.
Problem is, we're in Los Angeles, and, of course, New York thinks everything should come from New York. That's where God lives.
Anyway, there's hope.
We'll see.
I want to ask for a mailing address because that's a long distance call for me. Is there some way to get in touch through the mail, perhaps get a copy of the schematics?
Oh, I think you can. And let me see here. We're digging up an address. And it's got to be 409 Santa Monica Boulevard, and that's Santa Monica, California. And we don't know the zip. Isn't that gauche?
I tell you what you do, Craig.
That's right. I'll get a zip.
No, just send it to me. Address it to Dr. Bob Beck, care of Bill Jenkins, KABC, and I'll make sure he gets it. Is that all right?
Okay.
Because they didn't bring all of their information here with them. When in doubt, check with Bill.
But you do have this telephone number down there that's 393-9405, and that's area code 213, and they'll be able to take care of you right away.
Right. Now, since I missed the first hour, I'm not going to ask you to repeat everything you said. I imagine a lot of other people did, too. Could you briefly relate what your base of operations is, your affiliations or whatever, that kind of stuff?
No.
No, there's too much to say, right?
Right.
It'd take forever.
I'll talk to you about it personally.
Craig, let me put it this way. Trust me.
I'm not talking about trust.
When they get on the show, I've already checked that out, and it's okay with me.
No, that wasn't the reason for asking.
Okay.
I mean, it was very interesting to learn that you're the president of the Radionics Society.
USPA.
Yeah. I mean,
Now, what we're doing is better than this. We're passing out enough information that if anyone doubts any of these claims, we feel it's the scientific approach to say, okay, here's the schematic. You build it, and you see what you get. There's no mystery, no mysterious black box involved here. It's here. It's now. We can give you bibliographies in the technical journals, the hardcore scientific literature, as Tom Bearden puts it, and we're here.
We want to speak with data.
Right. Well, what have you put out personally as far as your personal research publishing?
Oh, I've published a couple of papers. I have one right here that says Extreme Low Frequency Magnetic Fields and EEG Entrainment, a Psychotronic Warfare Possibility that sort of shook up the community back in 1977.
Where was that published?
It was picked up by about 4 or 5 different journals. The one that you might have access to up there was the Journal of Humanistic Psychology. After that, we backed it up with about a 24-page technical paper that described all of the apparatus, gave circuits of the EEG amplifiers, some of the boxes we used, so that people could replicate whatever they chose, and everyone who's replicated has come up with the same result, so we feel pretty good about that now. And I guess you missed the fact that there are a number of international conferences on bioelectronic medicine. One of the most interesting was the one at the Loma Linda, the Pettis Loma Linda Veterans Memorial Hospital that was hosted by Dr. Ross Adey, in which our government funded a number of world-class scientists. And they met out there last June, 1983, and talked about these things openly for the first time in history. And the conclusion is that perhaps there's a great deal going on down here in the microgauss levels. The window amplitudes are so low that you cannot measure these with a SQUID, a sequential quantum integrating device, but you can with a large solenoid and low-noise amplifier. And if you look in the February 1984 Science magazine, you'll find a little article that establishes that electromagnetic pulsations down at the geomagnetic level, this is around the Schumann amplitude of around 70 to 125 microgauss, millionths of a gauss, are highly psychoactive and have caused changes in chick embryos, etc., etc. Delgado, who had to leave the University of New Mexico and go to Madrid, Spain, has reported that he's controlling behavior of animals from large distances with little bitty boxes, wireless. So it's here. It's hardcore scientific data.
It shouldn't be surprising to people, given, we already know that birds can navigate around the world. How do they do it?
Right.
But with reference to the Earth's magnetic field, of course.
We know that some fish, dolphins, anchovies, stingrays, sharks, whales can communicate underwater at vast distances that defy James Clerk Maxwell. And if you want to talk about this, you sound highly informed. Give me a call.
Craig's one of our good ones, and I wish we had more time. Craig got to you earlier if we'd known you was on the line.
And our 3 hours is up tonight. But
my.
Bob, thank you so much for coming by, and we'll do it again. John Bedini.
It's a real pleasure.
John Bedini next week. You have a good weekend now, will you?
A voice.